Scary and weird experiences with neighbor, posted by Catbee. Just looking to get some opinions and advice as to what to do to stop this situation from potentially escalating before it does. I live in a large city in a pretty big apartment building with 30 plus floors and tons of units. We have a lobby with very friendly doormen who monitor traffic in and out, and beyond some weird and frightening experiences with the titular neighbor, love the experience of living in this building. My boyfriend and I moved into our current apartment about 4 months ago, and pretty early on, I was alone waiting for the elevator one morning when I hear the very sound of one of the doors opening a little bit. I turn my head and I see our across the hall neighbor just barely peeking his head out from the cracked door. I assume he must have seen me see him because he ducked back in and immediately shut the door. It just immediately gave me the creeps. I can't really describe it. It wasn't like it was his whole head or anything, and his door wasn't open wide enough to actually be able to do anything besides just watch me. I brushed that off, and I went about my day and chalked it up to him just being nosy. Shortly after that, my boyfriend and I started noticing yelling from our neighbor's apartment at all hours of the day. It almost sounded like he was talking on the phone with someone and getting really angry at them. Based on the language he used, it sounded like he was yelling at a woman, but I've never seen anyone else come out of that apartment, and I never heard another voice besides his in these arguments. Again, not sure if he was even arguing with someone or just yelling for the heck of it. About 2 weeks ago, things escalated in a pretty dramatic way. Now, disclaimer, this incident is not confirmed to be the same neighbor, but for reasons I'll go into later, myself and my boyfriend think it is. It was Saturday night, around 3 a.m., and myself and my boyfriend were completely asleep. I was awoken to the sound of what I thought was our TV falling over and breaking, or possibly a window breaking, just some incredibly loud noise. I woke up my boyfriend and he went to have a look around, but didn't find anything. He was heading back to bed when the sound happened again. This time it was obvious where it was coming from: the front door. The door to this apartment is heavy, made entirely of very thick metal, and it was shaking in the frame as what we could only assume to be a large person took a few steps back and threw their weight into it. This happened over and over again, with the door actually moving in its frame with each blow. At that moment, we were truly terrified that someone was trying to break in. My boyfriend rushed to keep the door shut and told me to call the police, which I did. He told me he could feel the door buckling each time this person slammed on it. Within about a minute of the police arriving, the person stopped. When the police showed up, they told us that someone else on the floor had also called to report this same thing happening, but they searched every floor and told us that there was no one suspicious. They also said a doorman was in the lobby all night and no one entered or exited the building who wasn't a resident. They left, and we were still very shaken up, so we sat in the living room for about an hour before trying to sleep again. During this time, we heard the neighbor go in and out of his apartment a couple times, bringing up a doorman once to tell him that his lock was broken. Seems weird to me to figure this out at 4 in the morning, but maybe it isn't. My theory is that he was so turned around for some reason that he thought our apartment or someone else's apartment on our floor was his. He couldn't get in, and then he thought that his lock was broken because of it. The next morning, we spoke to a doorman, and he all but confirmed this theory, though he did seem like he knew more than he was letting on and didn't want to single out this neighbor, rather letting us share what we knew first. He also told us to always call the desk before the police, which seems stupid to me given how aggressively this person was trying to get in. A couple of weeks go by without incident, and then yesterday, we were coming back home to find our neighbor charging his phone in the hallway near our door. No one else on the floor has ever done this, and there were no notices of electrical outages in the building. Generally, the property managers are very good about sharing information if any electrical outage or other building issue is taking place. My first thought is that his electrical is shut off, but I have no idea, and really, that's none of my business, just putting it in here in case it's relevant. The real update from yesterday is that he was, again, watching us as we waited for the elevator. I saw him before my boyfriend did, and he closed the door very quickly. The only difference between this time and last time is I heard him make a ton of noise trying to get the door open, only to peek his head out and watch. I'm just creeped out, and I don't like going into the hallways on my own anymore. I love this apartment otherwise, like I said, just need some advice. This commenter asked OP, are there any security cameras in the common areas? I can't imagine a building would have a doorman, but no cameras. And OP says, they told us there are no cameras in the hallway. My boyfriend was too focused on holding the door to get a good look through the peephole either, unfortunately. The cameras in the lobby showed no suspicious activity. Someone else says, my neighbor has an adult grandson who behaves oddly, and sometimes in frightening ways. He is schizophrenic. After trying to understand the condition, it seems the behavior does not mean they are violent human beings, but stuck in a personal heck in their mind. Maybe the doorman is aware? Just giving the possibility. But please always ensure your own safety. I agree with the commenters. Get a peephole camera and let the authorities know. This story has an update. It's called 99% likely that my mom stole $200,000 inheritance from me. I might have to contact a lawyer, but I still feel terrible, even though this is her own dang fault. Posted by please insert disc 2. My dad died 10 years ago. My mom, for the longest time, has always wanted help. There was a time when I had 2 jobs, no car, and I was a full-time student, and I was going to get a haircut, and my mom approached me and said, really? You're supposed to be using that money to help me. She's claimed my dad ruined our credit. Last year, she claimed that dad borrowed $10,000 from my aunt, so she needs help with the money since she has to pay my aunt $10,000 back. I gave her $600 or $700 of my unemployment money, and later on, I find out that she's had her own dang unemployment money. A few weeks ago, though, she changed her story to, I have to pay back aunt $10,000 a year. At that point, I realized, okay, she's a liar, a huge one. So I go and I check the files cabinet in our house. And what do I find? A trust with like $600,000 in it, and a paper that states that I am a beneficiary of $200,000 of my dad's life insurance. I was supposed to receive that money 8 years ago when I turned 18. I called the insurance company, and they said that they received forms that I supposedly signed and sent in, and they sent out a check, and that they're going to see if it was cashed in or not. But let's be real, who submits forms to receive a check and hides it for 8 years? She obviously cashed it. Whether she placed it into a trust fund or not, I don't know. I feel like that she robbed me of a much easier life. I wouldn't have had to work minimum wage, for instance. I could have focused on school. I could have gotten a car that wasn't holding on for dear life. I could have maintained my dental, mental, and etc. health. So many things. But I still feel guilty that I'm going to be cornering her most likely tomorrow and asking her to fork up that money, otherwise I'll take it to the courts. Part of me feels like that I'm just being a spoiled child, but that's my money. I saw the papers. My dad meant for that money to go to me. She can't even claim that she used that money to help me. Why do I still have student loans? The update. Basically, it took me a very long time to finally accept that nothing I say and do will get through to my mom's head and ego. It was just 1.5 years of her attempting to negotiate with me, manipulate, confuse, and isolate me, and so on. I had to go through months of therapy and do lots of introspection and remembering and analyzing my past to really come to this conclusion. I really couldn't believe how weak-minded I was last year. I started talking to a lawyer last month, and that lawyer mailed a demand letter to my mother. I ended up leaving the house before my mom opened it, as in, gathered my essentials and stayed with a friend. My mom hired her own defense attorney immediately. The defense attorney already offered to settle from the get-go, and I'll be hearing that first settlement offer tomorrow. I've been waiting to hear it for nearly 2 weeks now. But I'm sure it'll be an extremely lowball offer, and this will be dragged out as much as humanly possible. However, we requested the journal entry from the notary that allowed all this to happen, and hopefully the notary's journal and their reply will be all that we need to permanently have the upper hand here. But just for my own sake, I need to prepare for the worst. I'm currently couch surfing, living with certain friends on some days and certain friends on other days. I have some job interviews in this upcoming week and school resumes in the next couple of weeks, so I'll be thoroughly distracted but also insanely stressed. Meanwhile, my mother is on vacation for the next 3 weeks, and I just have to remind myself that this is temporary and that I'm paying my lawyer on a contingency fee and she is paying her lawyer probably by the hour. Plus, doesn't it usually get far worse before it gets better finally? Someone please tell me yes. This comment says, I'd get the lawyer to put a lien on your mother's property as she owes you money but's not paying the debt. This would stop her from selling the property until she pays everything that you're legally owed and frees her dang spending. No P says, I don't think we've really gotten to that point where we're trying to figure out where all her money is yet. She immediately offered to settle and then, for some reason, stated, via her lawyer, that she needed 2 weeks to come up with the said offer. That first offer will be known to me tomorrow, and I'm absolutely dreading it, and that part you're talking about might come in later if she claims that she cannot pay our counteroffer, which she better not. I already know she has at least $260 grand put away in her own life insurance, and she has at least $300K in her own personal account, plus the account with my inheritance in it. I mean, if need be, we'll do what we can to find out how much money she has. Hopefully any other updates from OP are positive and they come out the deserved winner like they should be. Shared fence dispute, posted by Readly Deedle. We recently moved into a newly built home in a development that has been around for quite a few years. Our home was on the edge of the newest phase, so our property is next to a home that was built 2 years ago. For background, my husband has a friend and coworker named Calvin. Calvin actually also lives in our neighborhood and he carpools to work with my husband nearly every day. They have known each other for years. Calvin's in-laws turned out to be our new next-door neighbors, and they live directly to the right of us. When we first moved in, we initiated a fence being built with our neighbor to the left, and split the cost of the shared fence happily, as it was a joint decision and we decided to have it built at the same time. The in-laws on the right already had a pre-existing fence that was built probably before our home even started to get built. This fence borders our property. The in-laws have had Calvin ask us to pay $2,000 for this shared fence multiple times in the 5 months that we've lived here. They have never actually come to talk to us about it directly. Calvin just told them he would handle it, and he of course sides with the in-laws on the matter. They are very cold to us every time we see them, and they never want to converse. And we have just discovered it's because they think we owe them $2 grand. The HOA encourages homeowners to share the cost of the fence. However, it cannot force a neighbor to share the cost if they do not wish to have it built or otherwise. My problem is that this fence has been there for 2 years, well before the house was built or we moved in, and now they're coming after us for this money and not even asking me directly for it. I don't think it's right for them to ask this, but I also want to be neighborly and protect our relationship with Calvin and his wife. I'm finding it very hard to see the fairness here. Would you pay the money and move on, or hold firm that this is an inappropriate request? The commenters got it. They say, why would you pay money for a fence that someone else built 2 years before you moved in? And take the fact that they never want to converse with you as a blessing. Firmly tell Calvin that his in-laws are nuts and that you will never pay them money for a fence that was built years before you even bought the property. I mean, this feels like I go to Walmart and I buy a bag of chips. I eat the chips on my way to your house, and then I make you pay for the chips that you never even ate or had any use of. This is silly. Karen neighbor lawsuit, arrested and jailed for this with updates. You don't want to miss this crazy story. Click the video on your screen and I will see you there.